So I'm making this video to explain the rules changes in brief in the document that I'm sharing, and I want everybody to be able to have some sense of what the rules changes are about. Often in text they can be a little confusing, and in person they're a little clearer. So I'm going to just go over the doc, and if you want to pull it up now, that'd be good and have it up so that as I'm going through it, you can read along and know what I'm referring to. I'm not going to read every single thing, it would take too long. I'm just going to give you the gist. So the basics are that these are proposed rules changes. They're not actual changes. They're things we're thinking about changing, and if we like them and we get enough interest in changing them, then we'll change them. Don't use the doc as the only resource. Don't just read them and think that that's all you need to do. They're just written down so we have a list and that we know what we're trying to fix. There's a lot more nuance to each thing there. So really we need to try them out at events. That's what this whole part of the year is about. So as you go through, make sure you think about you get the concept of what that change means, and then know that we're going to need to test it and see how it actually plays. There's two types in this document. The first ones are more mechanical changes. They're just like change this rule to be that rule because it would work mechanically better. And then the second part is more philosophical stuff, which is much more about how do we want to run events and how do we want them to flow and how many characters and that kind of stuff. That's the second part. So if you're more interested in one or the other, you can skip ahead to that part and just focus on that part. Both are equally important in the game. So part one, as you see here, is the mechanical changes. So a couple of these are that hack should be AV0. It should actually be more like Impale and Slay, where you have to get AV0 to make it cut through the armor. That would be more consistent and also would nerf it a bit because it's very strong. Second one is adjusting aggressive. We want to make it a little less, player v player problems. So we're going to make it more like maybe inept at not dropping players, or even inept at not attacking people who attack you. And so there's kind of like an open area to adjust that. The next one is disable should only be able to really remove abilities from your class, and that would really nerf disable a bit and make it much cleaner for things like disabling a fish and making it not be able to swim, or disabling a wolf and making it not be able to use martial arts, which is a little counterintuitive. I think there's a better solution to this one, which is I think the next one down. So below that is that I think abilities you get from your species should not be removed by standard effects. So this means that if you get zombified and you're an Uruk-hai, you just keep your leather armor, you keep aggressive, and you keep armor piercing. You don't have to change much, you just act like a zombie. And that's much cleaner. And if you apply that across the board, it fixes a whole bunch of things. It fixes things like disable then, because then disable actually can't remove those things. And that fixes a whole bunch of stuff, like being able to disable a giant strength, which seems a little strange, whereas being able to disable the ability giant strength from a class is a little more clean for a character that's learned that ability. All right, so moving on, water updates. This one's real popular, and I'm really enjoying this one, which is to make water act more like real water than sort of a mechanic in the game. So the idea is that if you fall into water, that you can move by, if you have a free hand, and then you can just kind of move at a heel-toe step speed, like stealth. You're inept at combat when you're in water, so you can't, if you do start to fight, you'll have a 20 count of combat, and that'll cost you a mana. So you're basically going to exhaust yourself and then drown due to mana loss and passing out in the water. Now, if you're wearing armor, that changes. If you're wearing armor, then every 20 count after you fall in, you're going to start taking damage. And there's some interesting rules and interactions there that I think will be really great. But I really like the feel of that one. It feels more like water can be real water. Similarly, we don't we don't want water to be able to, we want water to be able to keep you from burning. It seems sort of strange that we allow people to light things on fire in water. It seems a little bit like computer game mechanics, and that I'm trying to steer away from that. I don't like it when the game simulates things in a really bizarre way rather than in a more realistic way. Similarly, flying, the Amazon ability specifically, we want to have a height limit. So that means that it might be 30 feet, but I'm really decided, but really just the idea is give it a height limit, then things can interact with it. Castle walls could be built higher than the height limit, which makes them much more, safe. Anyways, all kinds of things that it interacts with. You can read it there. Also, we're thinking winged flight might be different than the flying ability from Amazons. So I mean, there'd be 3 types of flight: glide, Amazon flying, and then winged flight. So it'd be a better version. Further down, Partner Awaken is kind of hard to justify that it's non-magical healing. I mean, we could if we want to, but it does seem really strong for non-magical healing, so we may want to reclassify it. If so, that really buffs terror, such as something to think about. Divine Gift should come with a corresponding flaw, I think. There's other things we could do that are more finicky and with a paladin, but they require a lot more shifting, and this is actually a really simple fix. This goes along with it, all the Divine Gift and all the standard rank 2 and down things should give standard things off the charts. So Mind Strike. Mind Strike really should probably give us you either holy or magic, not both. Like when you pick it, you should say, I want Mind Strike, I want this weapon to deal magic now, and that's what my Mind Strike does. Or you should be able to pick it and say, I want my Mind Strike to deal holy. That way you don't have this like blanket holy effect and then magic with one thing that's really strong. And also forces you to kind of make choices, which I like. I kind of want to decrease the amount of AV0 in the game. I feel like armor doesn't really count that much in a lot of situations, and it's also just because there's so much armor piercing in the game that at a certain point we have to make all these systems like unbreachability and things to like counter all the AV0, and really if we just sort of reduce the amount of AV0, we could kind of not need so much unbreachability or things that counter AV0. So this is kind of a long shot. I don't know if this will really get proved, but I'm thinking about it, see if we can get it to happen. Which is just, there's a bunch of ideas here in terms of ways to reduce the armor piercing in the game, limit it more so it's a little harder to do. Some of that has to do with how improved strength interacts, some of it has to do with how weapon mastery interacts, and also Divine Gift gives you a lot of AV0. You can kind of see this theme with how I try to enter hack and make hack not AV0. You can see there's a theme there, and it just makes armor a little more like useful. Similarly, or want to make unbreachability probably just resistant to AV0 on armored limbs. So this is a further nerf. The generations of unbreachability have been being resistant to AV0 everywhere. That was too strong, and then like we reduced it down now the limbs that were just shields, and that's also too strong. So we're kind of continuing nerfing it because it's really good. I think resistant to AV0 on limbs is still really good. It just means Ward can actually interact with it now, which would be fine. Similarly though, you could also make unbreachability stay shields, but it's only on when you're stationary. I think it's a little bit gonna be rough on the veteran, but you can do a combo of the two. Anyway, there's some suggestions here. A neat fix to avoid. People have complained about avoid a lot. I really think avoid's fine, but if you did want a fix for it, a couple of players were suggesting things, and then that made me come up with an idea that was a bit different, but I think could really work, which is that you could make it so avoid fails if the user can't move. So like if the person's earthbound, snared, or impaled, they can't avoid because they can't move to avoid the thing. It's kind of intuitive. And you could also add that if they're using a stationary ability, like an ability that requires them to be stationary, like brace or crit or accuracy, then they also can't avoid because they are using a stationary ability, and they have to be still. So then avoid, wouldn't work. So I think there's maybe a little stuff to work out there in terms of exactly how it interacts, but I think that's really good because it does mean that if you tumble, you can't avoid after that, which is actually a nice balance because tumble's really strong and so is avoid. So rank 3 fixes. Here's a couple of ones. There's a bunch listed here, but basically it's things like, can we get withstand into Triumph Healing Surge, because Triumph Healing Surge really doesn't interact with anything in night. Or maybe we can just give it have Triumph Healing Surge give you kind of an extra hit point maybe. There's some ideas here. We really want to get rid of darts and darts in the game. We think it'd be better just to have people throw arrows because then we don't have to make both Fizz Reps. And arrows already exist, and we can just make a lot more arrows, which would be good for everyone. It's just really how we do that. That's up for debate, and so there's a couple ideas here. We also want to add limb healing to the barbarian, so that barbarian healing factor doesn't just get you up, but it also could heal your limbs maybe while you're up. That'd be kind of neat. It's not super strong, but it's a really nice quality upgrade to an effect that doesn't synergize with Berserk, and then in this case it would, because if you get hacked while you're berserked, then you could actually heal those limbs. It just could all around. So alternative convokes, this is something that a player brought up, and I really liked it, is the idea that when we convoke, you have to take your hand above your head, right? So that means that when you attack, you swing down, and that often adds force that we don't necessarily want in the game. We actually want the game to be tagged, and it kind of makes it very much encourages younger players to kind of really swing hard. And so is there a way to get around that? So I came up with a bunch of alternative convokes, which are basically things we could put in different places. we could just say you can do any of these things, or you can convoke. We could make like all convoke costs be these things, right? And then that just means you get to choose any of these things you want. I mean, that's a really broad open version. Another version could be you could like specifically replace things with these, or you could just save these and use them in other ways. It's up to us, but there's some ideas. So one of them is like a flourish, which is where you twirl a weapon. They have to rotate it, 360 degrees. And there's different ways to do it, but you can do it any way you like. There's one called transfer, where you actually move it from hand to hand. There's one crouch, which is really what Whirlwind Door is, where you tie to the ground. Heft is where you sort of hold the weapon in your hand. People do this naturally. I've been watching players a lot to see what they naturally do, so I can get some of these things in there, and they don't seem too strange. Spin is where you actually spin around, and like basically rotate yourself 360 degrees. And then flare is where you have to, your hand has to go behind your back of the torso of the person. So it's really just to take the weapon behind you kind of an action. And then you can do all kinds of combos of those if you want to. These might be neat costs for magic items. If we don't bring it into the game there, we could put them onto magic items or other things, or put them into other classes you want to create. All right, so that's part one.